The early morning light was just starting to touch the Missouri hills when Billy Jenkins headed to the barn that September day. At 63 years old, he'd followed this same routine for more than 40 years, knowing every corner of his 30-acre ranch near Buffalo. The gravel made a familiar sound under his boots, and the air smelled of drying hay and the coming fall, but something felt off. Billy stopped suddenly, his hand pausing on the barn door latch. From inside, he could hear movement, the clear sound of a horse shifting its weight, hooves scraping the concrete floor. But all 4 of his horses were outside in the paddock. He'd put them there himself the night before. His heart began to race as he slowly pulled the door open, and what he saw made him catch his breath. Standing in an empty stall at the far end of the barn was a horse he had never seen before. She was a bay mare, painfully thin, with a coat so dull it looked like it hadn't been properly cared for in months. Her head hung low, and even in the faint morning light, Billy could see her ribs pressing against her sides. But what truly stunned him wasn't the mysterious horse alone. It was the piece of paper taped to the stall door, fluttering a little in the breeze from the open door. Billy stepped closer, his hands shaking as he reached for the note. When he read the words written in desperate handwriting across that paper, tears began to roll down his weathered face. This is the story of what that note said, and how one mysterious horse brought an entire Missouri community together in ways nobody could have imagined. Billy stood in the barn aisle, reading the note again and again under the pale morning light coming through the high windows. His throat felt tight, and his eyes kept blurring with unexpected tears. The note read, "Dear Mr. Jenkins, her name is Ruby. She's 12 years old. She loves carrots more than anything in the world, and she's terrified of storms. She'll nudge your pocket if she thinks you have treats. She saved my daughter's life once when she was just a foal. Threw her clear before a tractor tipped. My daughter's grown now, married, moved to California. I'm dying, liver cancer. The doctors gave me 2 weeks, maybe 3. I tried everything to find her a home, but no one wants an old mare who can't do much except be loved. The rescue said they'd take her, but they were full. And I know what that means. I know what happens when shelters are full. I've been watching you for 3 weeks. You don't know me, but I drive past your place every day on my way to the clinic for treatment. I see how you are with your horses. I see you talking to them in the morning, checking them over. I see the way they come to you, happy, not scared, happy. I don't have family left to help. I don't have money for fancy boarding, but I have Ruby, and she deserves to live out her days somewhere safe. I spent my last bit of strength getting her here. Your gate was unlocked. I'm sorry for trespassing. I'm sorry for this. If you're reading this, I'm probably already gone. Please don't let her be alone. Please don't send her to auction. She's a good girl. She's been my best friend for 12 years. There's $200 in an envelope nailed to the underside of the feed bin. It's all I have left. I know it's not enough. I know this is wrong, but I didn't know what else to do. Please just love her." Billy had to sit down on an overturned bucket, his legs suddenly unable to support him. In all his years of ranching, he'd seen a lot. He dealt with rustlers and drought, with colic and injuries, with losses and horses that had to be put down. But this was different. He looked up at the mare, at Ruby, who was watching him with dark, liquid eyes that seemed to hold all the weariness in the world. Her head was still low, her body language screaming exhaustion, fear, and resignation. She wasn't moving or making a sound, she was just existing. Barely. Billy stood slowly, approaching the stall with the caution of a man who'd worked with horses his whole life. Ruby didn't move away, pin her ears, or show any aggression. She just stood there, swaying slightly as if the effort of standing was almost too much. "Hey there, girl," Billy said softly, his voice rough with emotion. "Hey there, Ruby." "It's okay." He opened the stall door carefully and stepped inside. Up close, Ruby looked even worse. Her coat was patchy in places, and he could see old scars crisscrossing her shoulders and haunches, evidence of a life that had been harder than it should have been. Her hooves were overgrown and cracked, desperately in need of a farrier. Her eyes were sunken, and when he ran his hand along her neck, he could feel every vertebra in her spine. But when Ruby turned her head and gently pressed her muzzle against his chest, Billy felt his heart break and mend all at once. "Yeah," he whispered, wrapping his arms carefully around her bony neck. "Yeah, you're staying, girl." Billy spent the next hour getting Ruby settled properly. He gave her a small amount of hay. She was too thin to handle much food at once without risking colic, and a bucket of fresh water, which she drank so desperately he had to pull it away to keep her from making herself sick. He found the envelope under the feed bin, just like the note said, and inside was exactly $200 in worn $20 bills. He was on the phone with his veterinarian, Dr. Ellen Carter, who'd been treating his horses for the better part of 2 decades. "Ellen, I need you to come out this morning if you can," Billy said, pacing in his kitchen while keeping an eye on the barn through the window. "What's wrong? Is it Duke again?" "I told you that old Gelding's arthritis was going to." "No, it's not Duke. It's complicated. Someone left a horse in my barn overnight, a mare. She's in bad shape, Ellen." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Someone left a horse." Billy explained everything, the mysterious appearance, the note, the $200. When he finished, Ellen was quiet for a long moment. "I'll be there in an hour," she finally said, her voice tight. "Don't give her too much food and check her gums and capillary refill." "Already on it." Billy looked out at the barn where Ruby stood in the stall, visible through the open door, her head hanging low. "I'm going to keep her, Ellen." Another pause. When Dr. Carter arrived an hour later, she took one look at Ruby and let out a low whistle. "Oh, honey," she murmured, setting down her veterinary bag. The examination took over an hour. Billy stood by watching as Ellen checked Ruby from head to hoof, taking notes, running her hands over every inch of the mare's body, listening to her heart and lungs, checking her teeth, eyes, and hooves. Finally, Ellen straightened up and pulled off her exam gloves, her expression grave. "Okay," she said. They walked outside the barn and Ellen leaned against her truck, crossing her arms. "She's severely malnourished, probably been underfed for at least 6 months, maybe longer. She's got rain rot, several old injuries that healed wrong, and her hooves are a disaster. Her teeth need floating, she's got worms, and I'm pretty sure she has ulcers from stress." Billy felt his jaw clench. "With proper care, yes, but Billy, proper care is going to be expensive. We're talking months of careful feeding, supplements, medications for the ulcers, the works, and she'll need the farrier multiple times to correct those hooves." Billy didn't hesitate. "I don't care about the cost." Ellen smiled a small, sad smile. She pulled out a notebook and started writing. The next 7 days were a blur of careful feeding schedules, medications, and constant monitoring. Billy set his alarm for every 4 hours, getting up throughout the night to check on Ruby, to give her small meals, to make sure she was drinking water but not too much at once. His wife Betty thought he'd lost his mind, preparing another small meal of soaked hay pellets and supplements. "Ruby needs to eat," he replied simply, stirring the mixture. "She's been starved for months, Betty. Her body forgot how to process food properly." Betty sighed, but she didn't argue. She'd been married to Billy for 41 years, and she knew when he'd made up his mind about something. Instead, she started setting her own alarm, alternating the night feedings with him so he could get at least some rest. "That woman who left her," Betty said one morning, standing in the barn doorway and watching Billy brush Ruby's patchy coat. "Both," Billy said quietly. By the end of the first week, Ruby had gained 15 pounds. Not much, but it was a start. More importantly, something had shifted in her eyes. That dead, hopeless look was starting to fade, replaced by something Billy recognized: cautious hope. She started nickering softly when she saw him coming with her meals. She'd shuffle forward in her stall, ears pricked, waiting. And one morning, when Billy reached into his jacket pocket for his phone, Ruby nudged his hand with her nose, searching for treats, just like the note had said she would do. Billy felt tears prick his eyes again. He pulled a carrot from his other pocket. He'd started carrying them just in case, and held it out to her. Ruby took it gently, crunching it slowly. And for the first time since she'd arrived, Billy saw something that might have been contentment cross her face. "There you are," he whispered. But the real turning point came on day 8, when Billy's neighbor, James Coleman, stopped by to borrow a tool and ended up hearing the whole story. James was a beef cattle rancher, but he'd known horses all his life. And when he saw Ruby, his expression went dark. "That mare's been neglected something fierce," he said bluntly. "Someone who was dying and desperate," Billy replied, and he told James about the note. James listened, then shook his head. "This isn't right. People shouldn't have to get to this point." That weekend, James organized a meeting at the local community center. He invited every horse owner in Dallas County. Billy was hesitant, but Betty convinced him to go. "Tell them Ruby's story," she said. About 30 people showed up. Ranchers, pleasure riders, trainers, farriers, and veterinarians. Billy stood in front of the group, his hat in his hands, and told them everything. About finding Ruby, about the note, about the desperate woman who had run out of options. When he finished, the room was silent. Then a woman named Virginia Price, who ran a small boarding stable, stood up. "About 5 years ago," she said, her voice shaking slightly, "I found 2 horses tied to my fence gate one morning. No note, no explanation." A murmur ran through the room. Then another person stood up, a young man named Calvin Rhodes who trained barrel racers. "Last year, someone dumped a lame gelding on the side of Highway 65, just turned him loose and drove away. Some teenagers found him and called me. He'd been hit by a car and had a broken leg." More stories came tumbling out. A mare found abandoned in a stock trailer at a sale barn. A whole herd of horses seized from a property where the owner had died and no family had come forward to claim them. "We have a problem," James said once everyone had spoken. "Not just here in Dallas County, but everywhere. People are getting into situations where they can't care for their horses anymore. Illness, financial hardship, divorce, death, and they don't know where to turn. The rescues are full. Private boarding is expensive. And selling a horse that's old or lame or just not useful anymore, that's a one-way ticket to a bad situation. We create a network," Virginia Price said, standing up again. "Right here, right now. A Dallas County horse safety net. If someone in our community is struggling, if they can't afford feed or vet care, if they're facing a situation where they might have to give up their horse, they call us." Another voice called out. "With what we have," Virginia replied firmly. "Maybe one person can donate some hay. Maybe another can offer a few hours of labor. Maybe someone else can provide veterinary care at a discount or farrier work, or just temporary boarding until we can find a solution. We don't need money, though that helps." Billy felt something tight and painful in his chest start to loosen. He stood up slowly and the room turned to look at him. "Ruby's gained 23 pounds in 2 weeks, he said. "Doc Carter says she's going to make a full recovery. The farrier came out yesterday and started working on her hooves. Said it'll take a few months, but she'll be sound. And you know what? I didn't do it alone. Ellen gave me a discount on the vet work. The feed store in Buffalo donated the supplements she needed. My neighbor brought over alfalfa pellets from her stash." He looked around the room at all the faces, people he'd known for years, people he'd worked alongside at cattle auctions and farm meetings, people who understood what it meant to care for animals even when it was hard. "That woman who left Ruby at my barn, she was alone. She felt like she had no options. But she was wrong, she had all of us." The room was quiet again, but this time it was a different kind of quiet, the quiet of people making a decision. "All in favor of starting the Dallas County Horse Safety Net, say aye," James said. The chorus of ayes was unanimous. Over the next 3 months, Ruby transformed. It wasn't a sudden change. It was the kind of slow, steady progress that comes from consistency and care. Billy documented it all, taking photos every week, and the difference was staggering. By week 6, Ruby had gained 60 pounds. Her coat was starting to shine. The rain rot cleared up with medicated shampoo and the simple fact that she was getting proper nutrition. Her eyes were brighter, more alert. She started moving around her stall more, and when Billy turned her out in the small paddock, she actually trotted, stiff and awkward, but it was a trot. By week 10, she was up to 100 pounds of weight gain. The farrier had trimmed her hooves 3 times now, and while they still weren't perfect, Ruby was walking more comfortably. The ulcers were healing thanks to the medication, and most remarkably, her personality was emerging. Ruby, it turned out, was a busybody. She wanted to know everything happening on the ranch at all times. She'd hang her head over the stall door and watch Billy work, nickering commentary. When Betty came out with treats, Ruby would practically dance in place with excitement. And if any of Billy's other horses dared to get attention before her, Ruby would pin her ears and squeal indignantly until she got her share of love. "She's bossy," Billy told Ellen during one of the follow-up checkups, but he was grinning when he said it. "That's what we like to see," Ellen replied, running her stethoscope over Ruby's chest. The Dallas County Horse Safety Net was growing too. They'd set up a phone tree, created a simple online page, and organized a small fund where people could donate if they wanted to. Within the first month, they'd helped 3 different horse owners. There was elderly Frank Mitchell, whose wife had just passed away and who was struggling to afford feed on his fixed income. The network organized a hay drive, and Frank now had enough to get his 2 old mares through the winter. There was Rachel Boyd, a single mother whose daughter's pony had foundered, and the vet bills were more than she could handle. The network connected her with Ellen, who worked out a payment plan, and with a nutritionist who helped design a recovery diet using affordable ingredients. And there was the case that had broken Billy's heart. A young couple who'd lost their farm in a foreclosure and were living in a camper while trying to get back on their feet. They'd been hiding their horse in a friend's pasture, sneaking out at night to feed him, terrified someone would find out and take him away. The network found them proper boarding at Virginia Price's old facility, which she'd reopened specifically for cases like this. The couple was paying what they could afford while they got back on their feet. "You started something special," Betty told Billy one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sun set over the hills. "James started it," Billy corrected. "No, honey," Betty said softly. "That woman who left Ruby here, she started it. She trusted you with something precious, and you honored that trust." Billy thought about the note, which he'd saved and pressed between the pages of his Bible. "I wish I could tell her Ruby's okay," he said quietly. Betty reached over and squeezed his hand. It was mid-December, 3 months after Ruby had mysteriously appeared in Billy's barn, when Virginia Price called with news. "Billy, I need you to sit down for this," she said, her voice strange and tight. "What's wrong?" "No, Billy, I found her, the woman who left Ruby." Billy's heart started pounding. "How?" "Do you remember I told you my daughter Linda works at the hospice center in Springfield? Well, she was going through some old files, helping them organize things, and she came across a patient from September. A woman named Dorothy Ann Sawyer, 71 years old. Billy's breath caught. September 15th, that was 2 days after Ruby had appeared. Linda said this woman kept talking about a horse in her last days, Virginia continued. Kept saying she hoped Ruby was okay, that she'd found her somewhere safe. The hospice staff thought it was the medication or maybe memories from childhood. But Linda remembered our meetings, remembered Ruby's story, and Billy, she looked up Dorothy's address. And it's on Route 38, about a mile from your place. The house has been empty since she died. No family came forward to claim it, but Linda drove by there. Billy felt tears burning in his eyes. She had to hook up that trailer by herself, he said hoarsely. That's not all, Virginia said softly. Linda asked around at the hospice. The staff said Dorothy refused to be admitted until the last possible moment. She kept saying she had to take care of something first. They thought she meant paperwork or finances. Billy hung up the phone and walked out to the barn. Ruby was in her stall, looking healthier than she had the day she'd arrived. She'd gained 120 pounds now. Her coat gleamed, a rich mahogany bay in the afternoon light. Her hooves were nearly back to normal, and when she saw Billy, she nickered and shoved her head over the stall door, nosing at his pockets for treats. "Your mama loved you something fierce," Billy told her, his voice breaking. "She didn't give up on you." Ruby snuffled at his jacket, found the carrots he'd started carrying religiously, and crunched one contentedly. Billy pulled out his phone and called Virginia back. "It's going up for auction next month." Virginia told him the amount. It wasn't small, but it wasn't astronomical either. Billy thought about the $200 Dorothy had left, about how that was probably the last money she'd had in the world, and how she'd given it to take care of Ruby. "I want to buy it," Billy said. "What?" "I'm going to turn it into a recovery facility for horses like Ruby, for horses that need time and care to heal." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. The Dallas County Horse Safety Net rallied like Billy had never seen before. When word got out about his plan to buy Dorothy's property and turn it into a recovery facility for horses in crisis, the community opened their hearts and their wallets. James Coleman organized a fundraiser at the local community hall, a dinner and auction with donated items ranging from handmade quilts to a side of beef. They raised $8,000 in one night. The feed store in Buffalo donated materials for fence repairs. A construction company offered free labor to fix up Dorothy's old barn. The local bank, when they heard what Billy was trying to do, worked out a manageable loan for the remainder of the purchase price. And 3 days before the auction, Billy got a call from a lawyer in California. "Mr. Jenkins, my name is Gregory Palmer. I represent Miss Samantha Sawyer Blake." Billy's hand tightened on the phone. "They were estranged," the lawyer said carefully. "Samantha moved to California 15 years ago and the relationship was complicated. She wants to help." The lawyer paused. "She said she failed her mother while she was alive." Now Billy had to sit down. "There's one condition. She'd like the facility to be called Dorothy's Place, and she'd like there to be a plaque somewhere on the property telling Ruby's story." "Done," Billy said without hesitation. By January, Dorothy's Place was operational. The old farmhouse became an office and supply storage. The barn was repaired and divided into 6 large recovery stalls. The paddocks were refenced. And on a post at the entrance to the property, they mounted a bronze plaque that read, "Dorothy's Place, a safe haven for horses in need," in memory of Dorothy Ann Sawyer, who loved her horse Ruby so much that in her final days she found the strength to ensure Ruby would be safe. This facility exists because of her love and because of a community that refused to let that love be in vain. If you or someone you know is struggling to care for a horse, please reach out. There is no shame in asking for help. Below that was the phone number for the Dallas County Horse Safety Net. Ruby was the first official resident of Dorothy's Place, though Billy brought her back to his own barn each night. He figured she'd earned a permanent home where she was loved and wanted. But over the next few months, Dorothy's Place took in other horses. A neglected quarter horse seized from a bad situation, a lame thoroughbred whose owner had died suddenly, a pony whose family had lost their home in a fire. Each horse came broken in some way, physically, emotionally, or both, and each horse left healed, ready to start a new chapter. It was a warm day in April, 7 months after Ruby had mysteriously appeared in Billy's barn, when a rental car pulled up to Dorothy's Place. Billy was in the barn checking on a new arrival, a paint mare recovering from severe colic, when he heard footsteps. He turned to find a woman in her mid-40s standing in the barn aisle. She had Dorothy's eyes. "Samantha," Billy said softly. It wasn't a question. She nodded, looking around the barn with wonder. "I had to see it. I had to see what my mother, what you—" She stopped, her voice catching. Billy gestured toward the office. "Would you like some coffee?" They walked to Billy's ranch in silence, Samantha's eyes taking in everything. The neat fences, the rolling pastures, the horses grazing peacefully in the afternoon sun. When they reached Billy's barn, Ruby was in her stall, dozing in a patch of sunlight. "Ruby," Billy called softly. Ruby's head came up, ears pricked forward. She ambled to the stall door, and when she saw Samantha, something remarkable happened. Ruby's nostrils flared, taking in the woman's scent, and then she whinnied, not her usual demanding sound, but something softer, almost questioning. Samantha stepped forward, her hand trembling as she reached out. Ruby sniffed her fingers, then pressed her forehead against Samantha's palm. Samantha whispered, tears streaming down her face. Samantha nodded. "She was my horse. My mom bought her for me when I was 16. She laughed, a broken sound. "We were inseparable. I got a scholarship to Stanford. I went to California, met my husband, started a career. I meant to come back, I meant to visit more, but there was always another project, another deadline. And then my mom got sick the first time, that was 10 years ago, ovarian cancer, and I came back for the surgery, but then I left again, and we had this fight. I told her she needed to sell the ranch and move closer to me where I could take care of her." Samantha wiped her eyes. "We barely spoke after that, just holiday cards and awkward phone calls. And then last September, I got a call from the hospice saying she'd been admitted and didn't have long. I got on a plane immediately, but by the time I got there, I was 3 hours too late. She died 3 hours before I arrived. I'm sorry, I didn't even know about Ruby. I didn't know Mom was trying to find her a home. I didn't know she was here until the hospice staff mentioned it, and I started asking questions. And when I found out what she'd done, how she'd spent her last bit of strength making sure Ruby was safe." Samantha's voice broke completely. "I wasn't there for my mother when she needed me, but Ruby was." Ruby nickered softly and nuzzled Samantha's hair the way a horse does when trying to comfort someone in distress. "She loved you," Billy said gently, "your mother. That comes through in the note she left. She understood you had your own life." Samantha spent 2 hours at the ranch that day. She groomed Ruby, fed her carrots, walked with her in the paddock. And before she left, she wrote a check for another $50,000 to Dorothy's place. "Keep saving horses," she told Billy. "It meant everything," Billy replied. "They say that sometimes grace works in mysterious ways." And Billy Jenkins had never believed that more than he did now. Because one desperate woman's act of love, leaving her beloved horse in a stranger's barn with nothing but a note and a prayer, had sparked something beautiful. Dorothy's place had helped over 40 horses in its first year. The Dallas County Horse Safety Net had grown to include 5 surrounding counties and had assisted more than 100 horse owners facing crisis situations. And most importantly, the culture was shifting. People were learning that asking for help wasn't weakness, it was wisdom. Billy still made his morning walk to the barn every day at dawn, and Ruby still met him at her stall door, nosing his pockets for carrots. She'd gained a full 150 pounds from her rescue weight. Her coat gleamed, her hooves were sound, and her eyes sparkled with the contentment of a horse who knew she was loved. But on certain mornings, when the light hit just right, and the Missouri hills were painted in shades of gold and amber, Billy would stand in the barn and think about Dorothy. He'd think about how much courage it must have taken to drive to a stranger's property in the middle of the night, to leave behind the one thing she loved most in the world, trusting that kindness still existed. And he'd whisper a promise to the wind, "She's safe, Dorothy, your girl is safe. And because of her, because of you, dozens more are safe too. Your love rippled out into the world and changed things, you mattered." Ruby would nicker then, impatient for her breakfast, and Billy would laugh through his tears and give her an extra carrot, because that's what love does, it finds a way. Even in the darkest moments, even when all hope seems lost, love finds a way to bloom into something beautiful. And every horse saved at Dorothy's place, every family helped by the horse safety net, every person who learned that it was okay to ask for help, they were all living proof of one simple truth. One act of desperate love can change everything. If this story touched your heart, please show your support by liking this video and subscribing to the channel. We share real stories about the bond between animals and people, and your engagement helps us bring more of these important tales to light. Let us know in the comments below, have you ever helped an animal in need? What's your story? We'd love to hear from you. Until next time, remember, love finds a way even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Thank you for watching. Voice broke completely. I wasn't there for my mother when she needed me, but Ruby was. Ruby was there until the very end. Ruby nickered softly and nuzzled Samantha's hair the way a horse does when trying to comfort someone in distress. She loved you, Billy said gently. Your mother, that comes through in the note she left. She understood you had your own life. She just wanted to make sure Ruby had one too. Samantha spent 2 hours at the ranch that day. She groomed Ruby, fed her carrots, walked with her in the paddock, and before she left, she wrote a check for another $50,000 to Dorothy's place. Keep saving horses, she told Billy. Every horse you save is a way of honoring what my mother did. Every horse you save means her struggle, her choice to ask for help, even though it was hard, meant something. It meant everything, Billy replied. They say that sometimes grace works in mysterious ways, and Billy Jenkins had never believed that more than he did now, because one desperate woman's act of love, leaving her beloved horse in a stranger's barn with nothing but a note and a prayer, had sparked something beautiful. Dorothy's place had helped over 40 horses in its first year. The Dallas County Horse Safety Net had grown to include 5 surrounding counties and had assisted more than 100 horse owners facing crisis situations. And most importantly, the culture was shifting. People were learning that asking for help wasn't weakness, it was wisdom. Billy still made his morning walk to the barn every day at dawn, and Ruby still met him at her stall door, nosing his pockets for carrots. She'd gained a full 150 pounds from her rescue weight. Her coat gleamed, her hooves were sound, and her eyes sparkled with the contentment of a horse who knew she was loved. But on certain mornings, when the light hit just right, and the Missouri hills were painted in shades of gold and amber, Billy would stand in the barn and think about Dorothy. He'd think about how much courage it must have taken to drive to a stranger's property in the middle of the night, to leave behind the one thing she loved most in the world, trusting that kindness still existed. And he'd whisper a promise to the wind, "She's safe, Dorothy, your girl is safe. And because of her, because of you, dozens more are safe too. Your love rippled out into the world and changed things. You mattered. You made a difference." Ruby would nicker then, impatient for her breakfast, and Billy would laugh through his tears and give her an extra carrot, because that's what love does, it finds a way. Even in the darkest moments, even when all hope seems lost, love finds a way to bloom into something beautiful. And every horse saved at Dorothy's place, every family helped by the horse safety net, every person who learned that it was okay to ask for help, they were all living proof of one simple truth. One act of desperate love can change everything. If this story touched your heart, please show your support by liking this video and subscribing to the channel. We share real stories about the bond between animals and people, and your engagement helps us bring more of these important tales to light. Let us know in the comments below, have you ever helped an animal in need? What's your story? We'd love to hear from you. Until next time, remember, love finds a way even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Thank you for watching.